Think about how we retained our independence throughout the last 247 years. That independence has been maintained by the veterans of our armed forces, some of whom are here with us today. Let's look at the wars in which these veterans on this stage today may have fought. Some veterans here today may have fought in no wars, but they raised their right hand and took that sacred oath, as all service members have done. They would have been ready if ordered into combat. World War I ended 105 years ago. There are no veterans alive that fought in this war. But both Clifton Forge and Covington, there is a monument to the servicemen lost in World War I. I invite you to visit those monuments, and while standing before them, think about the sacrifice those veterans endured. Machine guns, artillery, tanks for the first time, aircraft bombs for the first time, mud, hunger, loneliness, deadly gas, and archaic medical conditions. And they had been away from home for a long time. In World War II, which ended in 1945, 78 years ago, I personally know only 2 living World War II veterans. Last year I knew 4. Let us remember Freddie McCormick and Malcolm Crawford. Only John Owens is here today with us. Will Camp is still with us, but not here today. John, will you please stand and receive a loud applause from those here today? Once again, I invite you to stand before the World War II monuments and think about what these veterans endured. Bullets, artillery, mines, modern tanks, advanced aircraft carrying bombs, rockets, and machine guns, mud, loneliness, acceptable medical conditions when available, jungles, hot weather in the Pacific, cold weather conditions in the Battle of the Bulge, the dreadful early morning of D-Day, and most of all, away from the family for years, sometimes 3 and 4. Thanks to these veterans, democracy in Europe was saved and the militaristic government of Japan was ended. The Korean War stopped 70 years ago. The Korean War is not ended, but a truce was signed 70 years ago in 1953. American servicemen and servicewomen are in Korea as I speak. These are combat-ready forces that have served the Korea for 70 years, and at 10 times more than 28,000 service members were there. Think for a moment about what Korean War service members endured. Machine guns, tanks, artillery, landmines, advanced aircraft with bombs, machine guns and rockets, mud, loneliness, acceptable medical conditions when available, bitter cold conditions in North Korea, especially at the Chosin Reservoir, and most important, away from their family for a year or more. Thanks to these veterans, democracy in South Korea was saved. The Vietnam War ended in 1973, 50 years ago. I want to stop here for a moment and recognize Kenny Lohman, who died very recently as he was commander of VFW Post 4299. He was on the planning committee for Stars and Stripes, and many of his fellow VFW members are here today. Let's have a moment to remember Kenny. Thank you. 2.7 million U.S. service members served in Vietnam. 58,281 service members died. Think for a minute about what the Vietnam service member endured. Agent Orange for the first time. Once again, machine guns, artillery, further advanced aircraft with bombs, machine guns, rockets, snipers, landmines, jungles, loneliness, acceptable medical conditions when available, hot weather conditions away from their family for a year or more, and a significant American population that did not support their cause, and disrespect upon returning home. For Persian Gulf War I, fought in 1991, 700,000 U.S. armed forces were ordered to the desert of the Middle East to push the armed forces of Iraq out of the country of Kuwait. Operation Desert Shield lasted just over a month. Our service members endured intolerable heat, sand in everything they wore, machine guns, artillery, landmines, snipers, aircraft bombs, machine guns, rockets, and newly missiles, loneliness and acceptable medical conditions when available. Persian Gulf War II. This war lasted of 2003 to 2011. U.S. armed forces were ordered to Iraq to end the regime of dictator Saddam Hussein. Our service members endured intolerable heat, sand in everything they wore, machine guns, artillery, landmines, snipers, aircrafts with bombs, machine guns, and missiles, loneliness, acceptable medical conditions when available, finally burning smoke oil, or oil smoke, at intense level. You remember those fires being shown on television. And they were away from their family for a year or more. The longest war is Afghanistan. Right there, the same age as Vietnam. It lasted from 2001 to 2021. American servicemen were originally ordered to Afghanistan to destroy Taliban forces that were thought to be behind the airline destruction of the World Trade Center in New York City. But it lasted far longer than it thought it would. Our service members endured intolerable heat, snipers, machine guns, artillery, landmines. You remember the IEDs, their landmines. Loneliness, acceptable medical conditions when available, and away from their family for more than a year. Many served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, our veterans here today, all of us, have participated in every war I outlined except World War I. You know where they went, and you know the conditions they endured. I ask our veterans to stand, and if you can, to be recognized on this 4th day of July, 2023, our nation's 247th birthday. Raise your hand if you cannot stand. Please give them a hearty round of applause. I encourage all attendees here, veterans, wives, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, and all other family members, to attend all veteran ceremonies conducted here in the Allegheny Highlands. Memorial Day to honor those who did not return. June the 14th, Flag Day, to celebrate the birthday of the American flag. Juneteenth on 19 June to celebrate the end of slavery. July the 4th to celebrate Independence Day, and Veterans Day, November the 11th, to honor all veterans who have served. I want to now invite you to the attention of the chair on the stage. Veterans organizations recognize at their regular meetings that there remain veterans of all wars that to this day who may be prisoners of war or veterans declared missing in action. Veterans continue to honor them by displaying an empty chair as a symbol of their not being present, but with the hope that they will soon return. The POW flag can be seen on many poles around the county. That is also a display of support for the return of our service members. At this point, I ask the service songs of the 5 branches of our military service to be played, and when your song is heard, please wave or stand to be recognized. Before we conclude today's ceremony, we have an additional honor to bestow on one of our veterans. Dr. Jack Backle served in the Korean War and was designated a nuclear veteran by serving on Navy ships during atomic tests in the Pacific. He came to Clifton Forge to be the president of Dabney Lancaster Community College. 14 years ago, remembering similar celebrations in his grandparents' small village in Michigan, Jack created the Stars and Stripes celebration. He wanted us to have an Independence Day event here in Clifton Forge that would entertain, celebrate, and educate everyone, lest we forget the history of how our nation came to be. Every year since then, including today, we're still enjoying our annual Stars and Stripes celebration. And even this year, while Jack was preparing to make a permanent move to Charlottesville area to be closer to his family, he was the one who brought the planning committee the idea of featuring the role of privateering had in helping us win our independence as a nation. Jack, will you stand, please?